Welcome. Thank you all for being here. We're going to get started in just about 1 minute. Thanks for coming. And in this minute, if you want to grab a water or a tea or a cozy snack, put a blanket on your lap if it's cold, something to help you settle in to this lovely chat we're about to have. Welcome, everyone who's just joining. We're so excited to have you here. We'll give it a few more seconds and then we'll get started. All right. We are 8:30 by my clock, and I am eager to take every second that we have of this wonderful chat today. So thank you all for coming. We're very, very excited to have you here with us today. And I will hand it over to Compassion Institute's Executive Director, Stephen Butler, to get us started.
Thank you so much, Tori. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. We're just going to try and cover all the bases, but we are so glad that you're here with us for this tremendous event. And as Tori mentioned, we're going to try and get into it as quickly as possible. It's incumbent upon me to let us all know that we've had a last minute change for our event. And sadly, Thupten Jinpa will not be able to join today due to a family medical emergency. So in lieu of his presence, he's thrilled to have more time to focus on Kelly McGonigal, her tremendous work, her most recent book. But in addition to that, he wanted to share some words just to acknowledge and express regret about this unexpected change in his schedule. So Jimp has asked us to express, I'm so sorry that I could not be with you today. I've been looking so forward to being with you and to especially seeing Kelly and hearing about her new book, The Joy of Movement. On my way out of Delhi, India, at the airport, one of my daughters, who is severely allergic to peanuts, ate some food that contained peanuts. I had to rush her to the emergency room and have her admitted to the hospital. She is okay now, and they are on their way back home. However, this delay meant that Jimpa could not be with us today. He expresses again, he is so sorry and looks forward to watching the recording. So with that, we will have more time to hear from Kelly and this tremendous work that she's done, this most recent book. Just briefly, as Tori mentioned, I'm Stephen Butler, Executive Director for Compassion Institute. We're a nonprofit organization. Our mission is to advance compassion as a guiding principle and active force to foster a more caring world. We do this by developing and delivering programs that address basically the well-being of individuals in society, designed to promote increased well-being in both of those areas. And we deliver those programs both to individuals and organizations. Thupten Jinpa is our president and co-founder, and Kelly McGonigal is one of our founding faculty. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Tori Saris, who will be our moderator for today's program. Tori Saris has been with Compassion Institute for a number of years, and she serves as program director in the public programs area, developing and delivering programs to the general public in a variety of capacities. And we're so glad that she's going to be monitoring and moderating this conversation with Kelly today. So over to you, Tori. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Well, as you all know, we are here today to talk about self-compassion and managing stress. Lately, so much of what we've been hearing and what we've been discussing is how people are just feeling really overwhelmed and helpless. Many people are expressing feelings of frustration, exhaustion, and powerlessness in the face of so many issues, challenging current events, and challenging political landscapes. With people feeling so stressed, it can be really hard to find space for compassion, especially compassion for oneself. We're very fortunate to have Kelly with us today, who is going to share insights on the topic of stress and self-compassion, as well as the topic of joy. For those of you who are not familiar with Kelly, I'm beyond excited for you to have an introduction to her today. Kelly McGonigal is a psychologist whose work shows us how to experience hope, connection, and meaning even when life is difficult. She is a lecturer at Stanford University and the author of the international bestsellers, The Willpower Instinct, The Upside of Stress, and her latest book, The Joy of Movement. Her TED Talk, How to Make Stress Your Friend, which reveals how stress can be a catalyst for courage and compassion, is one of the most viewed TED Talks of all time. And as Stephen mentioned, she is one of Compassion Institute's founding faculty, and she helped develop our 8-week Compassion Cultivation Training. Kelly, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. And I apologize to anyone who's here who's really looking forward to Jinpa's presence and perspective. I'm going to focus on the gladness that I felt that his daughter's okay. And also my gladness that you are here and that we're having this conversation.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kelly. Echoing your gladness that everyone is doing well. Well, to get us started, Kelly is going to lead us in a practice related to joy. So I will hand it off to you, Kelly, to get us going.
Yeah. And this is a really simple practice. I would love for you to look around where you are, wherever you are. It could even be your own physical body, and find something that reminds you or brings to mind someone or something that brings you joy. And I just got one. I'll share mine. I know Tori's going to share hers, but if you're with us now, just look around. What can you notice in this moment that reminds you of someone or something that brings you joy? Or maybe someone or something that you love. And you could enter that in the chat even, what that is, what it is that you're bringing to your attention. The thing that just caught my attention, so I had something planned, but the great thing about this actual practice is you should probably do it in real time. And I looked out the window that's in front of me and I see these two baby finches. And one of the things that brings me joy are all the birds who live around our home. And especially we had a finch nest in our porch lamp this summer. And we got to watch the parents build the nest and then the eggs and then the eggs hatching and the babies and, just like, oh, I hope everyone makes it. And then the nest was empty. And so seeing these birds now in the fence reminds me of that joy and how it's all around. Tori, what are you going to share?
Well, mine is much lighter, but my joyful item is my water bottle, which I have had with me since I first looked at colleges. I bought this when I looked at what would become my alma mater. In 2011, I went and visited colleges and I bought this water bottle, and it has been with me ever since. And it reminds me of the joy I felt upon seeing a college that I knew I was going to love. It reminds me of all of the people that I went to college with, of all of the hikes and backpacking trips and journeys that I have done with this sweet water bottle by my side. It's covered in stickers that were gifted to me by people I love or places that I love. So if you have ever seen me, you have seen me with this water bottle, and it is something that I cherish, and it brings me joy every day, in addition to bringing me water.
I love the way that you described that. You basically describe that water bottle like it's an extension of yourself.
Yeah.
Just because how a lot of people feel about the things that bring them joy, or the people that bring them joy. And I love that in describing the water bottle, it was kind of like it's almost like a Rorschach test. You're describing a kind of self-compassion. Like I heard in that story, which I'd never heard before, almost a kind of self-trust. You're reflecting back on your past self with appreciation for a decision that you made and acknowledging like your capacity to recognize in a moment a path to take. You were appreciating people in your life and what they contribute. I love, it's like you were modeling a certain type of self-compassion, which I guess we could describe as self-appreciation as well, that self-trust, that self-appreciation. What I could imagine, and as you were describing that, I could imagine you bringing that same mindset to the future to challenges in your life and feeling like you have a relationship to yourself and to life that can give you encouragement moving forward. And that's really, you know, that's the idea of this type of practice. I could probably do that kind of analysis on myself. The other example I was going to share was related to my cat, who is probably going to be on top of me at some point in this webinar. But I think that when we reflect on what brings us joy, joy as an emotion is what you feel when you're connected to something that is meaningful to you, someone or something important. And that often is a reflection of our values, and our strengths and our passions. And that would have been true for me, whether I talked about the cat or the birds. Something that I value about myself in life is the ability to appreciate connection with humans and non-human animals. So I hope that, you know, for those of you who did this practice, that you might take a moment and appreciate whatever it is that you found, what you observed, what that says about you. Sometimes I think of joy as being like it's like a resonance emotion. You know, I didn't even take physics in school, so I probably explained this wrong. But Tori, okay, maybe you know more physics than I do. There's this idea of like resonance, that if you had like a tuning fork, I see that Stephen is like, yeah, I think I understand this concept. The tuning fork, and it like vibrates at one frequency, and you get it started and it's vibrating, and you've got something else that vibrates at the same frequency. That tuning fork going gets this tuning fork going, and there's this like resonant energy that kind of amplifies and reflects it back. Does that sound like I'm explaining that right?
Yeah, you've convinced me. Yeah.
I think of joy as emotion like that when we turn our attention to things in the present moment, or to memories, or to ideas that resonate with our values, we get this kind of increase in energy. And what's great about the particular form of energy that joy gives us is that it is an uplifting energy, that it often makes us feel more hopeful about life, or it makes us feel better about humanity, braver, more gratitude. And so I'm hoping that those of you who did this little practice, that you can actually look at what it was that you brought to mind and sense that resonant energy of like what you noticed is reflecting back to you something beautiful about yourself. And that's a form of self-compassion as well.
Thank you, Kelly. What I love about that exercise is looking around the room that I am in every single day for so many hours of a day and getting to look at things that I have with a new lens. I have, through my work at Compassion Institute, come to realize how important my water bottle is to me, as silly as it is. But I also have an opportunity to look around my office and see that, you know, everything in this space is something that I've chosen intentionally. And it's easy to come in the morning and sit down with my coffee and just start working. And it's such an important reminder that there are so many things in this room that bring me joy
Yeah,
and
you
that
know,
remind me of people I love. Yeah.
we often think of attention as being like an on-off switch, like you're either paying attention or you're not. But I'm interested in how we can have attentional priorities.
Mm.
You know, whether or not you notice something, whether or not you process something, like your brain even gives cognitive resources to something that is true and real. It's dependent in part on what you want to be able to notice, what you want to be able to respond to, and what you expect to be true or present. And so I think like we can create these little attentional filters. And sometimes our filters, and most people, our filters, we've got the threat filter on most of the time. And I like to put a joy filter on sometimes with these practices, a little mindset reset, where I'm going to walk into a space and be able to notice the things that remind me of what matters, or evidence that that there are people in this world who matter to me. And I love that, like, again, it's such an important aspect of self-compassion. You said you put things in your environment for that reason, to remind you of those things. And that's another thing that we can do, is actually seed into the environment course, things that bring us joy, but also things that might bring joy to others, or things that might send the message to others that they matter, like that you matter to me. Because I mean, I'm sure there's nobody watching this webinar right now who maybe is in this picture, but I have some photos of me teaching and some students in the background there. And I like the idea that maybe someday somebody would notice that they matter to me enough that they're in my living room. I don't know if anyone here is one of my students. You can include yourself in that photo, even if you're not.
I mean, I love that as well. Well, and what you were saying about the way that you spoke about intention actually reminded me of a quote in your book, The Joy of Movement, that I wrote down because it really impacted me so much. But one of the people that you were highlighting in your book said something. She said, listen to what's real in the moment instead of listening to the old stories in her head about what was wrong with her body and what she could or couldn't do. And I read that, and that quote felt really relevant for me to stress and compassion and the way that we tell ourselves stories over and over about whether we are feeling stressed, and we tell ourselves that we're feeling stressed, or we're telling ourselves that we can't be compassionate. And we start to believe the story that we can tell ourselves, right? And I'm curious how you feel like we can get out of that story that we're telling ourselves and listen to what's real in the moment instead of listening to the story that we've been telling ourselves for years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the story that you're stressed could definitely be a true story, real in the moment. I mean, I think you know how I feel about stress. There's a reason human beings are stressed many times a day, all of our lives. Stress is it's like a fundamental biological mechanism for dealing with life. So I'm not sure I'm going to be able to change that story, but we can bring to moments that are stressful other things like compassion and self-compassion. The thing that, so that quote that you brought up, the idea that that's rooted in is that one of the reasons physical movement, and so, we're talking about things like swimming, weightlifting, dancing, running, that one of the reasons why engaging in physical activities is linked to so many positive psychological outcomes like happiness and hope and feeling connected to others, is because when you do physical activities, you get really different signals from your body that counter messages that might be based in the past or in your worst fears about yourself. So it's not even like you're trying to come up with a different story in your head. To be really concrete about this, let's say that you are lifting something heavy, a kettlebell or a heavy weight plate, and you brace your core and you take a stance where you can take it in your hands and then you lift it. You are going to feel signals from your body that let you know that you can lift heavy things, that you are strong, that there is something at your core that allows you to face things that are difficult. I mean, these are real physical sensations. They travel from your abdominal muscles, pressure receptors, and in your tendons, the receptors that can tell how much force is being pulled on your bones when you contract a muscle. Those are real sensory signals that go to your brain. And your brain loves to make meaning out of things. Your brain comes up with all sorts of interpretations, even of physical sensations. And your brain is going to be able to know not just, I can lift something heavy, but I'm strong or I'm powerful. I can do hard things. So the idea behind that quote that spoke to you was, it's not just physical exercise. It's that often we can take an action that is consistent with a way that we want to be, or a part of ourselves that we want to cultivate or depend on or share with the world. And often it's the taking an action that is consistent with that value or that part of yourself that gives you evidence in this moment of who you are, right? So it's not like an imagination. It's bringing into the present moment something that is true, but often we don't sense it as true until we trust ourselves to actually follow that behavior or that part of ourselves. And by the way, since you brought up movement, I always like to ask people, it's kind of like that joy question. There's a form of movement that is particularly meaningful or important to you?
There is. I am a runner. I have been a runner
You're a
my
runner.
full life. Yes.
Runners have
So
the best stories.
I
I'm not a
relate to your
runner.
sister more than you,
Yeah.
unfortunately, in that way. But yeah, I ran as long as I can remember, really. I've run through high school, through college. I'm training for my first marathon right now, which is very exciting. Yes. So I connected a lot to your conversations about run clubs, especially in your book.
Runners, my editor was like, Kelly, there's a lot of running in this book for somebody who doesn't run. But it's because runners have such great stories and such great insights.
Yeah.
Since you mentioned a marathon, I'll give you sort of one of my favorite perspective that came from talking to people about movement and what it means to them. Um, as part of the compassion community, we're really big on valuing interdependence.
Mhm.
And I heard from so many people that the most meaningful and joyful part of being a runner or participating in things like training groups or group fitness classes is the sense that you get to experience like every different aspect of interdependence.
Hmm.
You can show up at a place and you can contribute. You can encourage other people. You can ask for help. If you do it long enough, you're going to need help. So you're going to get to receive the supportive community. And at something like a race, you can be on the sideline cheering people on. You can be somebody in the race, letting people cheer you on, basking in that. You can be someone who volunteers at an aid station. Um, there's there's so many opportunities in movement communities for a balanced kind of compassion. And I know we talk about this a lot as part of what it means to be self-compassionate is it's not like a do-it-yourself project.
Mm.
It's not like, oh, I'm suffering, so I'm going to go off by myself and give myself compassion so I'm not a burden on anyone else. I mean, sometimes like, this is like the voice that I would have in my head. Like, Kelly, self-compassion means keep it to yourself. Nobody else needs to be like, has to know about it or deal with it. That's not what self-compassion is. Self-compassion is often believing that you are also capable of and worthy of other people's kindness and support and being open to that. And it's also about sometimes giving yourself the gift, the uplift and the meaning of helping others.
Mm.
And so like, movement communities are special in many ways because they're separate from some of our social roles and responsibilities that can really like squeeze us into one part of that cycle of compassion. You're always the giver, you're always the caregiver. Maybe in some parts of your life or because of things like illness, that you kind of feel like maybe I'm the one who's always perceived as needing help or support. And movement communities just, for whatever reason, they give people an opportunity to do all of that cycle of interdependence. And that's really healthy and healing.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you brought up self-compassion, and it made me think about it in a way I haven't with my own movement community. I have a really beautiful group of friends here where I live in Central Oregon, where we have become runners together. It's a mix of people who are lifelong runners, people who are newer to running. And the way that we show up to every race, every event for each other is so beautiful. And I often struggle where I absolutely love going to cheer my friends on. My husband is a runner as well, and I have a giant cutout of his face that I bring to every race of his. And I love to just like scream at the top of my lungs and wave his face around. But I, for a long time, felt uncomfortable asking people to come to my own races. I would do my races on my own and tell people, oh, you don't have to come to this one. It's okay. And I think it's because of my own relationship with running and how it's kind of evolved over time. But I'm realizing I was also robbing people of the joy of cheering me on. And I love that so much. And it took me time to be comfortable gifting that to other people almost as well.
This is such a great story.
Yeah.
So, right now I'm working on another book. And since one of my greatest joys is sharing scientific studies that are really lighting me up, oh, because I wish I don't have the researcher top of hand. This was a study it was a team of Japanese researchers. And when I read this study, I thought like this is definitely going in the book. So now y'all are going to hear about it first. This was a study where they were looking at the ability of individual brains to become synchronized. So like you and I are having this conversation, and the more connected we feel, even though we're not even in physically the same space, it's possible for our heart rhythms to align and synchronize. Maybe our autonomic nervous system is going to shift into synchrony, where like maybe our heart rate variability is the same, you know. Anyways, the same is also true with brain waves, that individual brains can become synchronized in a way that maybe reflects similar activity at the same time, or even this like kind of conversation between brains where my brain activity is directly influencing yours and being influenced by yours. It creates this kind of rather than being separate individuals, it's a real kind of biological togetherness. And if we were in person, it would be stronger. Anyway, so this team of Japanese researchers, they were interested in what helps people become more synchronized. And for whatever reason, they chose cheering somebody on as a behavior to manipulate. While you watch, it was actually, they were playing, what is it, paper, scissors, rocks? The order is.
Yeah.
They were watching a competition where people were playing that against each other. And the researchers randomly assigned observers to root for somebody, to just mentally cheer them on. And because they had EEG caps and they were able to measure like real-time brain activity, they saw that as soon as somebody made the independent decision to cheer somebody on, their brainwaves became more synchronized. And I thought like this is a perfect example of a mental reset that you can do anytime you want. You can just be like, today I'm cheering on Tori. I don't have to know what challenges you face today. I don't have to, I mean, I don't have to watch you play a game. I can simply think, I'm cheering you on. I'm wishing you well. It's kind of like a loving kindness meditation mindset. But this idea that when you cheer someone on, you're saying, your joy matters to me, your well-being matters to me. And the cheering part is also like, I'm willing to let you know it. Something like a loving kindness meditation, we're really the primary recipients of it. You do a meditation for someone, and in that moment, you're the main person who's benefiting from it. What I love about showing joy or expressing love and cheering someone on is that you're saying, I want you to also know that this is true. I want you to be able to receive this and know that I take joy in your joy. So there's a little practice for those of you who have a loving kindness practice. Think about making it loud also. So you can look for an opportunity to cheer someone on. You can do it mentally, knowing that that's already going to create this kind of heightened connection between you and whoever you're cheering on. And then, actually like, you don't have to cheer them on like you're at a race. It doesn't have to be whooping and hollering, but the idea that you can take what's inside of you and make it visible and audible to someone else who might receive that as a really powerful thing to hear or feel.
I love that so much, Kelly. That's amazing. I'm curious about something that I've been reflecting on a lot as I've listened to your book, and as we're talking today about movement and how much joy I know you find in movement, and myself, I find so much joy in movement and the community of it. You speak a lot about community groups, run clubs, your dance classes that you've taught. And I'm curious what advice you have for people who find the idea of group exercise really intimidating. People who, a lot of run clubs are not super pace inclusive. Maybe people are intimidated by yoga classes or classes where they don't want to feel like a beginner because it can be really hard as an adult to feel like a beginner. But they want to access this. They want to access this joy that you and I are feeling and that you speak so much about in your book. I'm curious about what advice you may have when group movement can feel intimidating to folks, but they want to be a part of this.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same advice I give for any kind of going outside of yourself to join a new community. Well, so even to step back, I should say there actually are a lot of communities out there for, so you've listened to my book, like every example I give is a community that like what brings them together is something that most people would think excludes them from movement. So, there's a dance class for people with Parkinson's disease. There's the boxing gym for people who have physical disabilities or recovering from stroke. There's for me, it's really important to give this message that movement is for everyone who wants it. And there really are communities available where even if there are barriers, if you feel like you don't belong or your body has challenges, I mean, there are groups out there. Sometimes you just have to look for them and find them. And sometimes you have to create them, which is a pretty meaningful project to take on. But in general, what I encourage people to do is when you show up in a new space, you think of yourself as having part of the responsibility for making other people feel like they belong. It's just a mindset shift. So when you walk into the room, when most people walk into the room, most people have that concern. Is anyone here happy to see me today? Am I going to be able to keep up? You just flip it and be like, oh, probably there's a lot of people here who are thinking or feeling that way. What if I thought that part of the reason I'm here is to make other people feel at home and make people feel welcome? If that were my responsibility, what would I do? And you will probably do things that actually create the kind of connection and belonging that you're looking for. You will make eye contact and ask people questions, ask for help and advice. You might notice things in the space that are worthy of praise and appreciation. It's just a different mindset. And I try to take that too. I'm the same way. It doesn't matter. I feel that way when I go to teach my class. I teach 2 dance classes a day. I still feel that it's my class and I feel that way. So
Yeah.
that's part of self-compassion sometimes is actually putting less focus on yourself. That's kind of seems like a paradox, but I'm pretty sure that's true.
Well, you're reminding me of, not to continue quoting your book, but there were so many beautiful, beautiful words that you shared. And another one that stood out to me was so simple, but you said you have the right to take up space in the world. And I heard that and I was listening on my phone and I like almost threw my phone onto the bed next to my desk because I was like, that's such an important statement. And it's so simple, but it feels so challenging for so many of us who feel like the act of showing up can be taking the space of someone more deserving or someone who needs the space more than I do or something like that. And I'm just reflecting on that as you're speaking to this because we do all belong in the same space and there's so much self-compassion in acknowledging that you have as much right to be somewhere as anyone else, right? And that by showing up in the space, you can bring that same space to someone else. But yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking when you said take up space, and I was thinking, what do people even think that means?
Yeah.
Because you could say take up space, and then the way you were thinking, like some of the voices you might have, like, oh no, take up space. I mean, there's lots of voices you can have in your head. It's not safe. People don't want to hear from you. Somebody else deserves the space. But taking up space is not like taking up oxygen, where if you are in a space, you by necessity, like the only way to take up space is to take something away from others. I was thinking there's this concept called peripersonal space, which is it's like a sixth sense in the same way that you have vision and hearing and all that. People have a sense of the space around them that they can project into and allow others to project into that becomes a shared space of mutual influence. So like some of the ways that researchers look at this would be like if we were in a room together, how far could we stand from each other and throw a ball back and forth? And like actually be able to throw and catch it. You're not so far away that like I just can't even reach you. I can't hear you. There's a certain kind of physical distance or space around us where we feel like we are connected through mutual vulnerability and mutual influence. So when I think of take up space, I'm often thinking of expanding that zone rather than, so, you know, if you're somebody who feels like you don't belong, or if it feels like you aren't safe in an environment, you can put on this kind of armor, like I'm going to make my personal space like this, and I'm putting the guard on and I'm putting my guard up, and it's like you're trapped. But other people can't get to me, but also I can really contribute. It's so when I think of taking up space, I'm thinking about finding both mindsets and actual communities where the experience you have is one in which it feels safe and welcoming to let your space be big. Does that make sense? It's like I don't mean take up space like
Yeah.
this is my space.
Yeah.
It's feeling expansive in your interdependence. And that includes what you can contribute and allowing others to influence and affect you.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you, Kelly. I want to go to the topic and make sure we're really touching on the topic of stress and self-compassion. I know that's why many folks may be here, and I will talk to you about movement until the cows come home. But I want to respect that topic as well. And I guess I just want to open it up to you. I mean, many of us learned from you about the idea of reframing how we think about stress. I know I was first introduced to you through your TED Talk. Actually, I was doing a AmeriCorps in Seattle, and it was part of our kind of orientation training was we watched your TED Talk. So I've been familiar with you for quite a while now, which is really wonderful how many people you've impacted with that conversation. And so I guess I'm just curious about how you envision the kind of relationship between stress and self-compassion and how we can reevaluate both of those to become more self-compassionate in the face of stress and all of that it entails.
You know, I have always viewed my core mission, like the thing that I wake up thinking about, I go to sleep thinking about, is wanting people to have a sense that they're able to meet whatever life is giving them. Like in this moment, to feel adequate to your life, and to feel like life is worth living. So when I think about the benefit of reframing stress, or even what self-compassion is, I often have like it's a very narrow kind of wish that I have, is I want you, no matter what the circumstances are, I want you in this moment and this moment and this moment to have a kind of courage and will to live. So that, with that understanding that that's the motivation, like what it means to embrace stress or to reframe stress, it's really about the beliefs that allow you to face really difficult situations with that sustained will to live, with the feeling like even if I wouldn't choose what's happening right now, I'm capable of getting through it, and maybe even allowing it to be the source of something meaningful, that I could meet the moment in a way that is of value to myself or to others. So reframing stress is not, you know, the things like I think it could mean that it doesn't mean to me is like, actually everything's all good. No, I'm not really stressed. Only focus on the positive, or stress has no harmful consequences. The reframe is really allowing yourself to be honest when stress arises, that your body and brain are telling you this is a moment that matters, And this is a moment that requires resources. That's all that stress is. Whether it's a fight or flight response that puts you in like hyper vigilant mode, or whether it's just this feeling in your gut that something's not quite right. It's the thought that keeps you up at night. It's the feeling of empathy you have when someone you love is struggling. Those are all versions of stress that are your brain and your body trying to get your attention and say, you care, this matters, and this is hard. That sounds a lot like self-compassion to me.
Mm-hmm.
And you can actually interpret your body's stress signals as trying to help you meet a moment with self-compassion. The same stress signals that maybe we don't love, that don't feel comfortable, they are also signals to ask for help, to do the things that give you strength or faith, to take an action that moves you forward. You know, there's signals that we can listen to. And even at like the biological level, often what we experience as stress is trying to prime us, give us the brain chemistry, give us the hormones in our body that make us willing to ask for help, or that give us the strength to face a challenge. I don't even know if that begins to address your question, but that's for those who aren't familiar with what I mean by reframing stress or embracing stress, it's really it's this kind of attitude shift that that allows you to accept reality, and then start to draw on the strengths that human beings have for getting through moments that are difficult or situations that are stressful.
Yeah. I think that's exactly it. I mean, when I'm thinking about the relationship between stress and self-compassion, it's simply acknowledging that it's hard is self-compassionate, and just acknowledging that this is stressful and it's hard is a self-compassionate act. And sometimes that's enough, and that's okay that it's okay that it's hard, and your body is telling you that it's hard and listening to it. Yeah. I want to go to a question from the chat. We have a question. How can I help a teenager manage their stress, especially if they have a serious mental illness?
Oh, well, so it's very difficult to help somebody else manage stress by talking to them about managing stress. So that's one of the first things I want to put as a framework for thinking, like, how am I approaching this? Particularly when it comes to family relationships. If you were to look at what is most important for helping a young person eventually be able to handle difficult life situations or difficult emotions, it's not the parent or the caregiver or the family member telling them how to do it. It's giving them experiences that make them feel like they matter, that they can trust others, that they have something to offer, that they are accepted as they are. So, you know, the first thing that I think about is not intervening to try to change the way someone you care about is dealing with stress, but to think about your role. And if you were to describe what somebody needs from you most, or to think about what does somebody need from me most, that would be like a general life resource. Is it to pay attention to them in a way that shows that you really care about what they think? Is it to join them in activities that allow them to be who they are and express who they are? Is it to have to think about them in a way of viewing them as a fascinating human being who you love and support, and you're looking for ways to do that? I mean, I'm describing things that are just slightly adjacent to trying to come in and make somebody feel less stress, or give them specific stress coping skills, which often people receive that as feeling like you think I can't handle life, or you only see the parts of me that are struggling. And that's different from if somebody is having, you know, a mental health crisis. and you have to get them help. I mean, the two questions that came in through the chat, depending on the situation, you have to ask yourself, is this a crisis? Or is this a situation where I actually have the room to think about what it means to just give someone this kind of unconditional sense of mattering? And they might be different situations, but I feel like this is true for anyone that you want to support, that the ability to be really sincerely interested in someone and to be interested in the strengths that they bring to their own challenges. It's a viewpoint, it's a relationship to someone that people really sense. Yeah.
It almost goes back what you're saying. It reminds me of the conversation about cheering people on. It's being genuinely interested in what they're doing it feels the same as cheering somebody on and being excited for them.
Because, when people are really stressed, one of the things that they bring to mind is the people who support them. I mean, this is like, that's psychology 101. If you believe that there are people who believe in you, who support you, who care about you, people often instinctively do it when they're stressed or when they're scared or when they're in pain. There's another study I was just reading about that was looking at inducing physical pain. And in some conditions, your partner is present with you. And in some conditions, your partner can hold your hand. And that particular study was looking at how having a partner present with you who holds your hand reduces your pain. And one of the ways it reduced the pain was by increasing that neural synchrony that I was talking about earlier. That simply having someone present with you who is simply thinking, I want to support you in this difficult moment, who can't fix it, they can't take away your pain literally, but they are providing presence. They're literally here for you. That creates a kind of now your emotions and your pain are being co-regulated by somebody else. And it kind of gets to the same thing that I was talking about, that sometimes the way you help people manage stress is you find in yourself the quality of presence that allows you to sit with someone who's struggling and to be there for them without worrying that they can't cope, or without feeling inadequate in yourself because you can't fix the situation for them.
Yeah, I think such a theme of today, as well as your book and the topic of stress, is that we crave interconnectedness, we crave human connection, and just providing that for people is so key and so vital.
Yeah, and if that is a challenge for you, to look for ways to open yourself to that more too. I've been my head is always full of studies. And I actually been thinking recently about my dissertation. So 25 years ago, the first study that I did myself as a psychologist was looking at how people form social support networks in new environments. And I don't know, we like measured everything you can possibly imagine. And the finding that just jumped out of the data was that if people are not willing to express positive emotions, they don't form social support networks in new environments. I think we'd all suspected it was the negative emotions. Like if you don't talk about your stress or your pain or your rage, if you don't connect in that way, how are you ever going to get support networks? You have to communicate your negative emotions so people can support you. There was some of that was in the data too, but more powerful was the importance of expressing and sharing positive emotions. I think that's kind of resonant with a lot of things we've been talking about today, whether you're expressing your love or cheering someone on or letting people know that they matter to you, or letting people know about something that brings you joy. I see more finches outside my window. That is a way of letting people know that you want to connect. And it is a way to build the connections in our lives that can sometimes be like, if you're the kind of person who has a lot of anxiety around social closeness, trust, or interacting with folks, to bring that filter that we started our webinar with. Oh, what's something that brings you joy? Or connecting through something to appreciate in the present moment. It's like social super glue. It really helps bring people together and create bonds. And I think it's because it expresses this basic level of loving kindness and goodwill to others. When you're curious about and interested in what other people enjoy or brings them meaning, I mean, you're essentially saying, without making a big deal about it, I care about who you are, your well-being, and your happiness.
Just want to hear that all day. I care about who you are, your well-being, and your happiness. That's it.
Yeah,
That's beautiful.
yeah. I think a lot of people don't hear that enough.
Yeah. And we don't say it enough too. Yeah. Stephen, I want to make sure we go to you for some questions before our time is up. So I'll hem my excitement for a minute and let you bring a question to the group.
Stephen, if you want to, we do want more questions, but we also would love to hear something that brings you joy.
Oh my
Absolutely.
goodness. Well, I'll dial it a little bit. I'll share a little bit. And like Tori, I could be listening all day. So, Kelly, thank you. The book Joy of Movement has this fascinating chapter on collective joy. It reminded me of a time when I was backpacking for a few months on my own before I kind of unexpectedly met two other backpackers and then started traveling with them. Once, while we were kind of chatting about kind of our individual journeys up to that point, one of them expressed that the highs of traveling together seemed higher than those we experienced while traveling alone. Does collective joy have a stronger effect than the joy we experience when solitary? Does collective joy last longer or resonate deeper with our minds? I'm curious to hear about that.
Collective joy is my favorite form of joy. So thank you for asking about this. Collective joy, it's not, I'm not going to like contrast it. All forms of joy have a particular value. And I often think it's like whatever is the most powerful medicine for whatever your particular pain is. So collective joy is the joy that you feel when you share a positive experience with people, and there's like a ricocheting of positive energy or emotions. Like what makes collective joy possible is it's more than one person in a shared activity or shared environment where people are feeling positive emotions like hope or triumph or celebration or contentment or inspiration. They're feeling these things at the same time, and they have opportunities to show it in words and physical actions. And for me, it's singing and dancing is a big one. I like going to places where people are singing and dancing and cheering. And what makes collective joy such an interesting form of joy is it's like you end up in this force field of receiving joy as well as an opportunity to express joy. And even in situations where collective joy feels kind of still, there's still that, or quiet, like if you're hiking together and appreciating nature together, or you're in a place where everyone is sitting and meditating and breathing together, you actually are still receiving energy. We sense, you can even smell when people are happy. There's a particular chemo signal that comes out through your skin. So even if people aren't dancing and singing, being in the presence of other people who are content or hopeful, you can breathe, you can literally breathe it in. And the effects of collective joy on people's individual psychology, it is different than other forms of joy. So, for example, the joy of accomplishment or the joy of helping others often makes us feel good about ourselves in a certain way. There's like a warm glow that's like, it's not selfish, but it's self-full. Collective joy, the strongest effect it seems to have is to make people feel better about humanity, to feel really hopeful and less cynical about the whole endeavor of life and what it means to be human. It's such a great antidote to feeling despair. And I love collective joy also because it's a high arousal joy. There's a lot of energy in it. So, the particular medicine I often need is an antidote to feeling dread. When you think about stress and when it brings out the worst instincts versus the best instincts, my worst instincts in moments of stress are like to shut down and to distance myself and withdraw. So collective joy is really good medicine for me because it's like show up and connect. It's just a physiological opposite of withdrawal and retreat and giving up. So, when you asked, is it better than or whatever the way that you phrased it, collective joy is my best medicine, but people are going to have different forms of joy that provide an antidote to whatever is most painful in their own mind and body, or to the beliefs that they carry that make them feel more despairing. It may be being alone in nature. It may be doing something creative. There's so many ways to experience joy. And thank you for asking me about one of my favorites.
That's so beautiful. I mean, especially as you tied it into hope and as the antidote to dread and despair. I mean, especially right now, I think we all need to tap into that. So,
I mean, stress, we don't talk about dread enough.
mm,
Stress is one thing, but there are these other states that are quite painful. Dread being the sense that like bad things are coming and there's nothing you can do to avoid it. Despair is like the sense that bad things are coming and nothing good is ever possible. Um, when I think about the states that I want to counter, stress, that's not at the top of the list, right? Stress is often the thing that can be it's like it signals you have a choice point and you can do something now that moves you away from the dread and despair. And we can look for those signals, whether they're emotional signals or thoughts that we have, physical symptoms. We can think of these moments of stress as choice points, and then look for the mindsets, the behaviors, the people in our lives that let us engage with life in a way that counters the despair or the dread.
I just love the sense of agency that we gain through everything you just said. The fact that we can regain a foothold against all of these things. So that's just brilliant. I know our time's coming close to the end, so I'm going to turn it over to Tori to perhaps ask a final question. Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, I just wanted to leave room, Kelly, for what you would like to close with, what you want the last thing that people who are leaving to hear as their main takeaways from this conversation.
Mm. Let me do a bookend to what we started with. A while ago, I was working on a project about the importance of music. I came across this, to me, utterly bizarre statistic that the majority of people would be embarrassed to have other people in their lives see their playlists. That they were like, I can't let people see what I really love, what I listen to feel better. And I just was thinking like, wow, what's the opposite of that? The the part of you who's like, I trust what I love. Um, I am not ashamed by what brings me joy, and I'm willing to share that with others because the response that I would have, like if you were to show me your playlist, I would be so delighted by whatever is in it because you're showing me something about who you are. And this must be a really good message that I'm sharing because the cat who never shows up on webinars just jumped into my lap. I don't.
Yeah.
This is the cat who never makes an appearance because she's usually too scared. She's just a bit. Okay, well, don't overcrowd. Those when someone first starts to show you their joy, that's probably what not to do. Yeah, so maybe like you can look for the people in your life who are like the shy cat who may be afraid to show you the playlist, or if you are that person, to trust what brings you joy, and take joy when somebody else is doing something that's the equivalent of holding up the thing that brings them joy. Look for a way to meet their joy with joy. That is truly an act of loving kindness.
Meet their joy with joy. It's so beautiful. Kelly, thank you so much. I wish I started every morning like this. This was so joyful for me. Such an honor to have this time to speak with you and to hear from you. And again, thank you everyone for your grace as we had to adjust our day without Jinpa. And thank you for your kind thoughts for his family. Kelly, just an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Stephen, I'll let you close with anything else you'd like to share.
Yeah, just endless gratitude, Kelly and Tori. Thank you for moderating our session with Kelly. Just brilliant. I just want to underline, we cannot recommend Kelly's books is enough. The Upside of Stress, The Joy of Movement, the most recent book. We eagerly look forward to the new book you're working on to hear all of that research kind of becoming actionable for all of us. So, and we're just really encourage you to check those out. I think Logan, we're going to be sharing some links so you can see those. And then we will let you know that Thupten Jinpa has a class starting at the end of this month, a 2-week journey designed for busy people who don't have a lot of time in their life to connect with compassion, called Building Compassion from the Inside Out. It starts August 30th, so we encourage you to look into that if you are interested. But other than that, just wishing you well, Kelly. Thank you so much for sharing all you do with all of us so that we can feel the benefit and be encouraged by that.
Thank you, everyone. Be well and find joy in the rest of your days. Thank you.